Mai te pai maunga, raro ke te pai. Mai te pai, raro ke te pai. Tēnei mauri iri, tētahi, whanga whanako.
Pretty mighty talkie.
Kia ora. Thank you. Thank you. Do we have any apologies? I think not. We are a full house. Hi, Grace. And welcome, Catherine. Thank you for being available.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Conflicts of interest. Any declarations? Not. Oh, and Whananga. Joe, welcome to the table. Good to see you here as well. So it's been a little while. Thank you. Thank you for being here today.
Yeah, well, thanks for being on the local station.
I'm very serious, I hope.
Oh,
We're bound to find out eventually.
oh, we actually won, so
Oh,
Congratulations.
good. Talk about that later. Okay, conflicts of interest, there are none. Public forum? We have none. Welcome. Well, thank you for coming. Yeah. And discussions probably not applicable. Youth Council views. Has Youth Council tabled any views on the matter past the last one? Confirmation of minutes. There are no minutes and reports. Straight into business on 8.1. Jeff.
Good, Your Worship. Might seek permission for Johannes to join us at the table in case we've got any questions on assets and infrastructure. While he does that, I'll introduce our paper today. So what we have in front of us today is a reflection of more than 4 years' work and rework on water reforms progressed by both National Coalition, New Zealand First and ACT Coalition governments, and previously before that, Three Waters Reform with Labour. The paper seeks endorsement of a Wairarapa Tararua Joint Water Services Delivery Plan for Carterton. The plan has 6 parts, with sections A and F shared with the other 3 councils and sections B, C, D and E being specific to Carterton. I've presented in this paper a single recommended option being the adoption of a joint Wairarapa and Tararua Water Service Delivery Plan. This is consistent with the previous council decisions, both to exit the Wellington Joint Water Services Delivery Plan development and to progress a Wairarapa Tararua plan. It's consistent also with our decision made to continue on with a joint plan on the 9th of July of this year. At the meeting on the 9th of July, Council requested officers continue with a backup plan for a standalone water services delivery option. I haven't included that in this report. However, I do have recommendations available for Council should that be a choice for you. Since writing this report, Masterton, Tararua and South Wairarapa District Councils have all passed resolutions to adopt a joint water services, Wairarapa Tararua Water Services Delivery Plan.
Can I ask Jeff, just to clarify, that's without any amendments to the papers that we've seen?
Further, since writing this report, I've received legal advice on the effect of the changes in modelling assumptions on Council's ability to rely on our local water done well consultation. This is mentioned on page 18 of the agenda. That advice notes that the purpose of local water done well consultation was to help Council decide the best way to deliver water services. It was not a consultation on the price of water services. Modelling assumptions have been updated since consultation to include a more conservative approach expected for capital efficiencies within the water services entity. Forecast prices after 10 years based on assumptions are based on assumptions and should be considered accordingly. The specific legislative requirements for local water done well consultation have been fulfilled, and councillors may rely on the information and feedback received as part of that consultation process. A further resolution has been drafted, which is in front of you now, to note that you will give consideration to whether or not further consultation should be undertaken, and you may decide that this was determined to be not required. Also, as mentioned on page 16 of the agenda, I have discussed with the Department of Internal Affairs the question of affordability and whether or not affordability metrics will be taken into account when considering this water services delivery plan. The DIA have confirmed that's not a factor in their decision-making process. I've also mentioned in the paper that the regulatory regime included in Bill 3 includes a number of steps that regulators will take when they are overseeing and guiding the water services entities' road to compliance and affordability. The most relevant of these is an information disclosure regime seeking to understand how the water services entity will achieve the twin goals. The regulator has not been granted automatic powers to set prices or override non-harmonisation clauses agreed between the councils. Officers consider the risk of non-harmonisation clauses being overridden by the regulator as low or very low within the 9-year exclusion period. We've also received feedback from the Department of Internal Affairs that should Council decide to proceed with a standalone option, it is likely that DIA would step in to support the group of councils, or 4, to resolve these issues with a view to getting a joint water services delivery plan submitted with a legislative timeframe. We note there is no time to appoint a Crown facilitator, which requires the endorsement of Cabinet. The DIA also confirmed their deadline for submissions remains the 3rd of September. We note the decision, the water services entity adopted by Masterton, Tararua and South Wairarapa councils includes Carterton District Council. In the event Carterton decides to stand alone and submit a standalone water services delivery plan to the DIA for approval, the remaining 3 councils will need to remove Carterton District Council's financial information from the joint plan, update financial forecasts and tests, and reapprove the adoption of a smaller joint water services delivery plan. As I said, I have recommendations should Council wish to proceed on that path. Happy to take questions.
So, Catherine, if I could just go to you, so team, I'd ask Catherine to be here as an independent person, someone who's been buried in the detail with the CEs and managing and leading, well, as the program director. Catherine, you'd just like to introduce yourself and just give a brief summary what your job, what your job entailed and what your position in terms of eyes across all 4 councils and anything that might be helpful in the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Ron, and thank you for having me here. Nice to meet you all and be part of this conversation. So as the Mayor said, my job is the Program Director for the Wairarapa Tararua Water Services Organisation. So I work across the 4 councils, reporting to the group of the 4 chief executives. I've been in the role since early May, so after your consultation process concluded. My focus for the last 3 months has been working with the chief executives and council teams on the preparation of these water services delivery plans and on the discussions around governance, financial and commercial arrangements for a new regional entity. Subject to these plans all being adopted by the 4 councils today, my role going forward will be to lead the establishment of this water services organisation and the transition of council services and assets into that organisation.
Thank you. Thank you. So heard from our CE in terms of the overview as to where we are, where we've been, the journey we've travelled and where we are and the decisions before us today. So cutting straight in, questions from the floor, from the table. Are there any? Deputy Mayor, does that look at me asking yes or was I?
Sure, I'll open with a question. Thank you, His Worship. Jeff, just a question. You mentioned the standalone in-house water services plan. Is that fully prepared and ready to be submitted by the 3rd if the decision goes the other way today or goes whichever way today?
So I'll ask Johannes to help me out. Essentially, Part A and Part F will need to be refreshed, which are the two parts that include commentary around the joint entity. Parts B, C, D, and E are all ours alone and can be will be reutilised. So we'll need to refresh Parts A and Part F.
Yep. So the standalone option would, or the standalone water service delivery plan would probably be 85 to 90% complete, and would require just work and polishing to get to a point of completion.
Thank you. None of the financial numbers would change because they are contained in Part B through E.
Thank you. Start.
I'll ask a question. The entry and exit clauses, which you've talked about, so we could potentially enter after a year, I think, as long as we were not going to make the entity financially worse off. But then if we're in it, we couldn't exit if we were going to make the entity worse off either. So can you see a case where we would be able to exit this combined water service entity at any point in the next 9 years?
I would go back to the original shareholding and consider the fact that Carterton is only 13% of the entire water services entity, and I can't see how a change in 13% is materially going to affect the financials for the water services entity over a long period of time. So I think it would be a significant step for a 13% change in shareholding to materially alter the financial outcomes for that. Okay. Does that answer your question?
It does answer my question, but is there a risk around that? You're saying it should be okay, but there's a risk that we could be stuck in it if us leaving, even as a 13% part of it, does leave it in a worse position financially.
There are always risks, yes.
Did I read that was like if we were to exit, there'd be a penalty clause and all that? It would costing us to exit.
I think the agreement between the councils has been that if a shareholder were to exit, they would be liable for all of the costs that were agreed as for shareholders up to the point of that decision, and then all of the costs that occurred after that decision point that would be the responsibility of the remaining shareholders. So I think you would only be liable for commitments made up to that point of decision.
Councillor Newman.
Chief or Johannes, what benefits do you see for Carterton within the first 5 years of this plan?
Okay. So one of our significant risks is that we run a very lean structure. So in terms of our staff, so there's a very real benefit in resilience to our teams. There's also the added benefit of depth and breadth of expertise in decision making. So currently there's a few decision makers in strategic direction, where in a larger organization you would imagine that there would be multiple layers of that expertise. So I would see that as a benefit from day one.
In addition to that, if we look at what's left behind, which is the remainder of council, it's quite likely that remainder will be entirely debt-free, which does create an opportunity for the remaining council to do things that it may not have otherwise considered, given the burden of borrowing.
So just a supplementary on that, if the Y+T is chosen, when would we be going through the decision of what assets would pass through to the water services entity?
The legislation is quite clear on what assets will go. So assets that are related, and there was one option that we had to choose, and that was whether we include stormwater or not. But if we have an asset whose primary purpose is for the delivery of water, drinking water, or management of wastewater or stormwater, that asset will transfer to the water services entity. So So if we take, for example, the decision to acquire Matarawa Road, that asset was purchased with the primary purpose of expanding our wastewater, land-based wastewater. So it would be difficult to argue now that that asset should remain behind in council.
So supplementary to that, any developments that we're doing now with Wainawa, potable water or our larger water resilience up there, they wouldn't be included?
That's in support.
That is correct. So the water service delivery plan excludes water races. And it excludes the process water activities that are in Wainawa and will exclude the water storage network that we propose in Wainawa. Perhaps I could augment my answer to Deputy Mayor and say where there is an activity on a piece of land, for example, we're undertaking an activity with composting and wastewater sludge. Now, that activity could be a commercial activity, and that activity doesn't have to transfer to the water services entity, but the asset will. So the land, which was purchased for the purpose of wastewater management and wastewater treatment, will be transferred along with the debt associated with that land. But we could, for example, determine that the commercial activity that's occurring on top of it, management of sludge, is actually a commercial activity that we just wish to put an arm's length arrangement in place for and retain.
Councillor Lawrence.
We've had a couple of pretty decent cyclones in recent years, which made a hell of a mess of your roads, Johannes. I don't recall having too much impact on the water's assets, but do you have any concerns about, if we were on our own, the impact of significant weather events or an earthquake of some significance, whether we would be better off or worse off in a larger entity?
I would start with saying that if we just take a step back to one of the main benefits, then obviously having depth and being more resilient would be an advantage. However, you would also anticipate in a significant event that the EOC would be activated, and it wouldn't necessarily matter whether it's in-house or whether it's regional, because it'd be a Wairarapa response. So
More
financially. Well, that comes down to the financial mechanisms. So that's one of the advantages of the Wairarapa plus Tararua, is the ability to borrow more. So if we had massive unplanned expenditure, then having the ability to borrow more would definitely be an advantage to the Y plus T option.
I
Slow Chair Campbell.
question. Well, I think it's simple. It's on page 8 of the agenda, and it's talking about the operating model and the implementation of it. It's the third paragraph. Pricing will be ring-fenced / non-harmonised for 9 years and subject to a review and decision by shareholding councils at that time. My question is my assumption is that this is confirming that this will be the review and the decision is by the actual councils and not the stakeholders forum. Is that correct? At that time?
I believe that's a reserved decision. So yes, it's not the stakeholder council. It will go back to the individual councils.
Thank you. I just remembering the conversations that we'd had in previous meetings.
Catherine, would you have a comment on that, a view on that?
It is technically that decision could be taken in either forum, and that would depend as we go through the process of drafting the consultation, the constitution and the shareholders agreement and things. We need to pick through some of these details. Technically, you could choose to grant full delegation to the person representing you on the stakeholders forum to vote in line, to vote however you choose to direct them, or that decision could come back to the council table, or you could choose to leave the decision with the stakeholder forum, but you could independently have a council meeting like this to determine your view and then direct the person to vote. So the precise mechanism needs to be worked through, but what's important is that that is absolutely a decision that you as a shareholder get to make, and you can choose to direct, either make that decision directly or direct the person, so you have control over that decision.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's all in you.
Did you have, can I ask Jeff, did you have something you were going to add before when we were talking about this question, was it?
Councillor Lawrence had a question around damage from cyclones and weather events. I was going to observe that the damage depends on where the rain falls or where the cyclone hits. And mostly that damage occurs in the roading network, where we have heavy rainfall on land-based activities. So it does tend to impact residential housing and flooding and surface flooding. And it may impact waters, but historically the largest impact has been on the roading network.
But an earthquake might be different.
Yeah. Underground infrastructure. That's what Nora,
Yes.
if you look at Christchurch, and I'm only just spitballing out the previous example, the biggest issue in Christchurch, other than their roads, their houses, obviously, but it was the underground infrastructure.
Yes.
That's where Christchurch got smashed, whether or not your insurance, and then all the problems with EQC after that, as to who was paying what. And if it hadn't been for the government leaning in with billions of dollars, Christchurch wouldn't be as pretty as it is today. I know that because I lived there 30 odd years and I have family still living there. So that, and talking to the mayors down there, without that funding coming from government, but that was an extreme event, they would not have coped. That's the fact. For us, I guess the thing that I would think of in relation to that question is Matarawa. That's low line. The big floods we've had here have virtually flooded. I think I've seen your photographs at Tower Gates of that whole area beyond your gates, totally underwater. We know the Matarawa farm's a wet farm. We know that moisture content is an issue and it has to be farmed in a particular way. And we know that in a flood that there's likely to be impact on that, but that's flooding. I think it comes back to the same point. If it doesn't affect your stormwater drainage systems, and that is generally eroding, but it comes down to the size. We can talk flooding, we can talk Gabriel, we can talk earthquakes. How long's a piece of string? Yeah, and a bit hard to say, but it's there. Councillor Newman.
Taking that.
Sorry, Grace. We'll go to Grace. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. That's right. I have a sort of a comment and a question. One of the main benefits that have been listed as the reason for us joining is that it gives us that increased level of debt. I'd argue increased level of debt is only a good thing if it's something that we require. So I have a question maybe for Johannes. Does the current debt ceiling that we have cause reason for concern or highlight a pressing need for us to join the entity?
I would probably argue that we need to have a look at our entire network and all the assets that we own. And if we consider that our wastewater treatment plant, for instance, the reservoirs will come to an end of its life in the future. It's likewise with the Kaipatangana and Frederick Street. So even though we don't forecast hitting that ceiling in the next 10 years, it's hard to predict what will happen in 30 years from now. So I think there will be big ticket items in the future, but not what we currently have in our plans.
And are you and your waters team fearful that if we were to vote to go it alone, that you would be unable to continue to manage our water infrastructure well going forward?
I would say probably not fearful. We would, whatever decision this council takes, we will do the best that we've got with the resources that we have. I'm very proud of our team and the assets that we manage, so probably not fearful.
Thank you.
Supplementary.
Not sure. No.
I've got a supplementary on that, Grace, if that's okay. So Johannes, you've already mentioned that our water services delivery team is very lean. And if a decision was made today to stand alone, how high would the risks be of us losing some of that team to a bigger entity that is also locally based with potential better financial benefits for them to move? And in that case, I guess my concern or question is, could we be left without a team to deliver, and what would that look like?
I think it's a real risk. But I would say it's the same risk that we've been living with for quite some time. But it is a real risk. We know that both the private sector and other councils or other water service entities would possibly be able to provide better opportunities for our staff. So that is a risk. Again, it's one of those risks that we would mitigate if the council were to choose to stand alone.
Could I add I don't view the risk as materially greater than what we face today from the likes of Masterton or Greater Wellington, who have a need for a large number of waters personnel and asset management personnel. So we do lose staff at the moment to larger entities, and I can't see that this would materially change with the creation of this entity, because though Greater Wellington will still be seeking personnel for their key roles.
So if we stood alone and the other three councils have already, as you've said, they have adopted this without amendments, and a Wairarapa Tararua water service entity was set up with more opportunities, what would happen if our staff left and joined them? How would we deliver water?
So in the event we have a shortage of key personnel to deliver quality services, we would look to contractors to augment our internal team, and we would use external contract resources who have the right skills, capability and qualifications to deliver that for our community. The cost of delivering that will obviously be higher than an internal model, but it doesn't mean there aren't options. It's just there are additional costs associated with going external.
So there is a financial risk that it would cost us a lot more to deliver the water.
I can just add to Jeff's earlier comment that the risk is probably not higher than it is at the moment. And the reality of the networks as is that the staff that's delivering it today is possibly going to deliver it in the future, one would think. So there's Wellington Water staff currently maintaining South Wairarapa, there's staff in Tararua, there's staff in Masterton. So there might be opportunities for our staff in Masterton, but there's opportunities for our staff in Masterton today as well. And so even though the risk is there, I don't think it's going to be abnormally different from what it is today.
Any questions? Deputy Mayor.
His Worship, I've just got, if we can just go back a little bit, Johannes, you mentioned about the future replacement of the reservoirs. I just have a question around our existing reservoirs and their replacement. How long have they been in situ?
The oxidation ponds?
Yes.
Ponds.
The oxidation ponds, depending on which one would be, the first one would be around 60 years old. We don't, and at this point in time, we don't see any issues with the condition of it. The desludging of the ponds that's currently part of our plan will renew the treatability or the treatment function of the ponds. Structurally, it's still sound. So I would say, unless we have a significant event, it's likely that those ponds have a residual life of up to 50 years.
Which brings me to your comment around the possible future replacement of the new reservoirs. The lifespan of those, I would expect to have a similar lifespan.
So
they've only just been completed.
So that would be, you would ascribe a 50-year life to that. So potentially the liner 20 to 25 years. So what I, if I can clarify, what I meant is all our assets is going to be renewed in the future. And what happens around that time is hard to foresee.
Thank you.
Councillor Della.
Thank you, Mayor. The standalone option, to me, the biggest risk with the standalone option is in the limiting of our ability to borrow to the same level, and also the finance options in the future. Those are probably my two biggest. And the other thing is that has already been mentioned. The DIA will be very closely monitoring councils that do decide to go standalone. So they would be my biggest risks at this stage for me.
Catherine, can I ask you to comment on that? No, you've had your eyes on this.
Yeah, that's correct. So there certainly is an implication from a financial perspective for the council. If you chose to stand alone, you would still be operating within your existing 175% debt to revenue ratio. And there are the service delivery implications that Johannes has just talked about around choosing to stand alone. The other set of implications that I think it's worth considering are the compliance ones around reporting and the economic regulation and things. So the economic regulation that the regional entity is subject to, a standalone business unit would also be subject to, has to be ring fenced within the council. It's got to meet the same financial sustainability tests, and it's subject to the same regulatory regime. So it's not a case that a standalone business unit is the same as how services are delivered today. While it continues to exist in the council, it would do so in a very different way to how services are delivered today. The other thing that the compliance obligation that would sit there is in the new bill that was passed yesterday. Councils that don't transfer their services to water services organisations would now have to produce 5 yearly water services delivery plans that essentially continue to demonstrate to DIA that you can meet these financial sustainability tests, and it's effectively like a sort of ongoing burden of proof, I suppose, if you want to think about it that way. So there are these new compliance requirements that will come into force for everyone, and additional ones that would come into force for standalone organisations that need to be considered.
Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, His Worship. So, Catherine, I've just got a question around that. I can understand further legislative political direction and oversight. You haven't really gone into what those could be, apart from saying that we would need to produce a water service delivery plan every 5 years. And I don't see that as being a lot different than having to produce a long-term plan every 3 years. So I would be very interested to know what those possible directions could be for a council like ours, when you consider the extremely positive position that our council's in, when we have sustainability in our potable water network, we have sustainability in our wastewater with our discharge consent and so forth. And we are also, our asset management plans are very, very, very good and accurate. And we are still spending on our infrastructure. So I would be curious as to how far these legislative requirements would come into our council. I can understand some of the other councils, let's say South Warwick, decide to go on their own. But this oversight of us, of our council, who are in a very good position, I'm struggling to understand what these new directives might be.
Well, I wasn't suggesting that there would be new directives. I was simply saying that you would be required to produce additional planning documentation that you wouldn't be required to produce under a regional entity. So under a regional entity, you produce this water services delivery plan and that's it. As a standalone unit, you would have to do this on a 5-yearly basis and continue to demonstrate the achievement of those financial sustainability metrics. The economic regulatory regime is, as Jeff talked about in his introduction, so there are those requirements around information disclosure that will be new and different and additional that everybody is going to have to meet as well. So I guess I was just pointing out that there are additional compliance obligations that would exist, well, that will exist for everybody going forward, but then those that would exist simply for those who choose to stand alone.
Thank you.
Grace. Councillor Ailing, thank you.
Hello. Just to follow on from that question, I just wonder, Johannes, if you could voice your opinion on if the additional compliance and reporting would be something that your current team would be unable to manage.
If we think back about to the consultation process, we always said that standalone or status quo would not be like it's delivered today.
Mm-hmm.
So we did anticipate that our team would need additional FTE to be able to do all the compliance reporting. At that time, it was unclear exactly how much information would be required by the Commerce Commission, but we anticipate we would probably not do it with our current capacity. We would need to have more people on deck.
Thank you.
So with my question, while everyone's waiting, because I don't tend asking a lot of questions, is if you've already crunched some numbers and you're already indicating that to do this, you're potentially looking at increasing staff numbers to meet the regulatory and the compliance standards that are going to be imposed on, by the way, the new service delivery planning standards. Plus, on top of that, you're doing the LTP as well and the APs and any other consultations. You're going to, I know it's crystal ball because we haven't done, I don't know if we've done that work. Do we have any idea of what the staffing increases are likely to be across the board?
Yes. And we'd included them in the water services delivery plan in front of you today.
Yeah.
So there is additional resource in the plan to cover those information disclosure requirements, both for the economic regulator and for the drinking water standards regulator, Taumata Arawai.
On the standalone model?
On our water services delivery plan?
No, I'm talking about standalone model to water services delivery.
The financials won't be different. No. It's still the same.
So I think
Staff numbers may go up, but the financials won't be different.
Well, perhaps I'll clarify.
Yeah, so
some of the financials for the joint water services delivery plan will have additional cost because there will be the additional cost from the joint water entity.
if I can may add to that, so there's also fees that will be imposed on us. That's included in the plan. And then, but when we did the original work back then, we thought in terms of how our team currently operates and the way that the structure is set up, we would possibly need in operations, we'd need an extra FTE for the compliance reporting in there. What that means for the finance or corporate and finance team, there might be another staff member required there. So without knowing exactly what we will have to produce, I would say it would be between 1 and 2.
So that's the in-house model?
Yes.
Not the out-of-house?
That would be
standalone. We have numbers on out-of-house?
I'm going to throw Catherine on the spot here. I can't recall, Catherine, of the numbers that we have within the joint model for additional staff. I do know there is additional resources in that model, but I can't recall how many they were. Can you?
We didn't.
Not just additional staff, I'm talking about the overheads.
Yes. So
Yeah.
So we have made assumptions in the model for the regional entity. We haven't got any modelling or numbers on standalone separate from, separate from council, yes, correct. So,
Okay.
because there's two ways in which you could stand alone. You could
Yes,
stand alone
yes,
as an
yes.
in-house business unit or as setting up your own water organisation. We haven't done any modelling on standalone outside of council.
So could you help me, and I'm looking to all of you. If a decision is made to stand alone, you've still got to make decisions to a standalone in-house or standalone out of house, and we don't have those numbers out of house.
Correct.
Okay, that's clear. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Gill.
I'm still, when I read page 14, just what is, yeah, okay, the total maximum 135%. And the in-house doesn't sound good. When you go down to standalone for a service organisation, you get down to the 500% for a service increase you can do. That changes it totally. And in fact, that next one over, I'm reading too, where if we don't go with the Tararua, we also don't have to put in 1.25 million. I'd rather not put in 1.25 million.
That was actually approved at our council meeting on the 9th of July by all of us to put in 1.25 million. We actually approved that at our council meeting.
I haven't spent any of that, however, luckily. Can I answer Councillor Gallon's question? So the 175% is of total council revenues. So that's all of our rates, including roading, general rates, UAGC, whereas the 500% is of water services revenues alone. So it excludes roading, it excludes UAGC and other targeted rates. And you are correct. We've budgeted for $1.25 million as our share of the establishment costs of a joint water services entity. It wouldn't be too hard to conclude that if we were to stand alone as a Carterton structurally separate water services entity, the costs would be broadly similar. You've still got the establishment of the entity, a board, a CEO, a management structure, et cetera, et cetera. So.
To correct me if Catherine, Grace, Councillor Ayling, you've got your hand up for me.
I was just sort of following on from that comment from Councillor Gallen and then Councillor Cherry Campbell, the vote that we had around putting the money forward, I believe, was on the proviso that we actually voted to go with this model. So it was sort of, it wasn't really agreed to that we'd be spending that money unless this decision went that direction. So I just think that's a slight clarification. With regards to one other big risk area in my mind with regards to levels of service, I was looking on South Wairarapa's website in the last few days, and they have a lot of commentary around their current arrangement with with Wellington Water and the issues that they face with regards to being seen as a priority in terms of getting stuff done for their network. And I just wonder what assurance would our ratepayers have that the things that are in our long-term plan would be prioritised by this entity, given the fact that our current state of affairs is better than our neighbours.
Do you want to know the concept with GNC and the program works?
I'll just something else. Thank you, Councillor Ayling. Some of the new regulatory requirements is that we not only have a fully operational asset management plan, but we actually need to implement it as well. And we will be required to, the water service entity or any water service provider will have to report on how they're delivering on their asset management plan. So I would imagine that it would, if a water service entity were not delivering on their asset management plan, they would get stuck with the regulator. And therefore, I would say it's unlikely that not every part of the network would be addressed. Further to that, in terms of Carterton, we have a long-term contract with a renewals contract with GNC Diggers. That contract's going to be novated into this into an entity should we go ahead, meaning that we would have a contractor on the ground ready to go day one of this of the switching over. So I think we're still in a good position, that with the covering of the regulator and then provisions that our team's already made, that we would see a continuation of service delivery.
Through you, Chair, could I just add a
Yes,
couple
please,
of
thank
points
you.
to that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Councillor Ayling, I think there's a couple of key features of the Wellington water model that are quite different to what are being proposed here. So the first one is that I think there's a very significant metro versus regional sort of provincial kind of dynamic in play in the Wellington water model that creates some of the issues that you have identified, and the challenges that South Wairarapa has. And I think that's one of the benefits of the Wairarapa Tararua model, is that it is for more similar organisations joining together with similar communities, infrastructure challenges, all that sort of thing. So there is quite a different dynamic in the shareholding there that I think it does create some of those issues. The other thing that is different is that Wellington Water doesn't own the assets. They just operate the assets on behalf of council. This organisation would own the assets and operate the assets, and so it will have the incentive on it to actually do the work, that are required to keep those assets. They will understand them and sort of have that ownership and operator tension kind of there in the same organisation, and I think that will make a difference, as opposed to, having to go and sort of bid to each shareholding council for money and and all of that kind of thing. I think that this is quite a different setup that will address some of those issues.
If I can do a supplementary, Mayor Ron?
Yes, please. Yeah.
So page 13 of the report talks about there'll be a review over a combined regional capital program. So it would start looking at it in a regional view set. So it would look at all the capital expenditure that's required, and it would be ranked according to need. How does that fit with the argument that we'd still get our projects done in a timely manner?
It may review, for example, at May review, it doesn't say.
Catherine?
Through you, Chair. So what we've done in the modelling to date, Councillor Ayling, is we've put the long-term plans in the model exactly as they are, and we've put the program in, and it's within that 10-year period. Once the board of the organisation starts to look at how you might bundle that work, how you might phase it or prioritise it, it's likely that will shift, just as they make those decisions about what is the most sensible order of things. And that's in fact one of the benefits of this model, right? That it gives those choices and the way for that to be able to, for the organisation to bundle work. The particular need to look at the capital program, I think, exists for South Wairarapa and Tararua in particular, and because of their price path. And so there might be some, while there is benefit in looking at the program at a regional level, there is particular benefit and need to look at the programs for those two councils and to consider ways in which that work needs to be phased in order to manage the transition and the price path for those communities. So there's kind of two elements there, but I wouldn't see rephasing and prioritising of the program as meaning that priority work doesn't get done. It's simply that once you can look across the region and think about how might I order these things or bundle work in the way that's most efficient, it just might fall out in a different order.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be fair to say, Catherine, that review of the long-term plans collective might actually generate changes that benefit Carterton, like Carterton potentially
Absolutely.
be seen as centre for waste management as opposed to standalone on its own?
It could be a number of benefits that come out of that. There might also be different phasing of the Carterton program that makes the Carterton prices more affordable as well. So there's a range of possible benefits there.
And if Carterton were to become the centre for waste water treatment or Greytown obviously first and potentially others, you'd expect to see investment in the Carterton space being increased by the board, logically.
That's
speculating.
possible. That's possible.
Yeah. Questions?
Can I just ask a question around quality standards? Because I think understanding is that we are heading towards national standards for wastewater and drinking water. And I think that may have been included in the legislation that was passed yesterday.
So I can probably answer that. The drinking water regulator, Taumata Arawai, is already in existence and is working through a plan to establish national standards for drinking water quality as well as wastewater discharge. And that's going through a different process that is separate from the local water done well legislation, because that regulator is already established and is already underway with those. But yes, there is an expectation that those functions will be, there will be a national standard countrywide that will allow councils to achieve a national standard and therefore get a consent, rather than going through the traditional process of applying to the regional council to obtain a regional council consent.
But as we're sitting here now, we don't really know whether those requirements will be more or less onerous than the ones that the regional council have.
We have seen draft standards that have come out, and suggestions from Taumata Arawai that those standards will be less onerous than requirements of a regional council consent.
So it's possible that may have some implications for the capital programs that the full councils are.
If I may add, less so for us, because we've got an existing long-term consent. So probably wouldn't impact us that much.
Are we into our consent? Yes, I will come back. Yeah. We got a 35-year consent back in
2017.
2017. Yeah. Councillor Ayling.
Hiya. Another risk that we've discussed a little bit is around the inaccurate or incomplete data that South Wairarapa Council may have due to the fact that it is part of Wellington Water. I wonder if Johannes or Jeff could talk to the potential risk that could put Carterton in if the actuals of their asset data turn out to be quite different from what we've forecast, and how that could impact our debt ceiling of this combined entity.
I'm happy to talk to that, Councillor Ayling. I think the important aspects in here is that the first 9 years will be ring-fenced. So all of the costs, all of the assets, all the liabilities and the capital investment will be ring-fenced to that entity. Ring-fencing beyond 9 years will be a decision for the board, followed by an engagement and a decision of the councils. So I think there is absolutely potential risk that asset information turns out to be worse than expected in an area of both, and that's not just in South Wairarapa. It could be in Tararua or Masterton, or even in Carterton, when we undertake a review of our asset information and find out that it is worse than we had otherwise anticipated. We can only make a decision on the information we have to hand today.
Well, if I can maybe just add to that, the ring fencing mechanism that's in place will deal with that wherever that scenario, in the event that it plays off, because even though you might reach your debt ceiling, the debt ceiling is determined by your revenue as well. So if you're really back against the wall, your revenue could be increased to deal with whatever disaster. Correct.
Catherine, anything to add?
That's correct. Both revenue and revenue and debt are ring fenced for that 9-year period. So if early on in the life of the entity, information came to light in any council, as Jeff has said, that council's financial position is ring fenced, and the entity would need to make a decision about whether that information resulted in need to carry out work, or that that kind of thing. So there is no risk in that sense. The other thing I would add is we potentially have a 2-year transition period now to 1st of July 2027, and from a South Wide and Upper perspective, investing and understanding the condition of the assets and what their resulting capital program should look like is going to be a key priority for that transition. So we're not going to go into the 1st of July blind. We will be in a much better position than we are at this point.
So anyone, talk us through the potential and the ability to extend the ring fencing period. What are the options there within the current proposal, just for the public?
It's up to the.
If you want to, yeah, I hear it. Arnold.
Catherine may correct me, but the commitment agreement outlines the terms that we've agreed, and that includes the non-harmonisation clause of 9 years. Beyond 9 years, the decision for non-harmonisation rests with the board in consultation with the shareholder councils.
The only thing I would just add to that is that at 9 years there is an explicit review point. So there is a hard-coded decision point for the shareholding councils at 9 years, and the way in which that decision will work is that currently there would be a set of pricing principles, that including a ring fence principle, but it's not the only one. There would be a set of pricing principles included in the governing documentation of the organisation. At 9 years there would be an explicit decision point. If the decision was made to remove the ring fence at that point, or to allow the ring fence to be removed, then it would fall out, that would come out of the set of pricing principles, and at that point onwards it would be a matter for the board. So it doesn't automatically happen at 9 years. There's an explicit mandated review that you get to exercise a decision over as the shareholder.
It's pricing principles. Are there any other questions? Comments?
There's a discussion in the floor.
Yes.
Discussion you're obviously about.
Nothing for me. It's some really good questions, and we've spoken about a whole lot of risks. I guess probably what I'm thinking long term, if the risks now are that if we're essentially an island out, by ourselves, and there is catastrophic event, is there a risk that the government would come in and support the amalgamated councils as a priority over Carterton?
That's a great question. It's a really great question. I think it's a fair possibility that we may see central government support for entities that are more aligned with central government thinking. A great question. I don't have an answer, but you're absolutely right.
Sense from talking to DIA, I mean, that's a wild card out there. I haven't put myself, Catherine.
No, it's not a question I've put to them. It's very hard to speculate on what would happen. But I mean, there is the precedent from Christchurch where the government funded 40% of the underground replacement of the underground infrastructure. So I wouldn't see that. I would see that sort of precedent holding kind of regardless. But it's impossible to say what would happen in a situation like that.
Just might come with conditions.
Yeah.
Too hard to say.
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Ailing.
Thank you. Question for Catherine. What risk do you see in Carterton opting to join the entity at a later point?
Well, there's a big risk to the rest of the region getting across the finish line if Carterton doesn't choose to join at this point. So the government's been clear, the 3rd of September is the deadline. So there is a risk to the regional, the ability of the rest of the region to meet that. Sorry, there's a very loud motorbike going past the. There's a risk to the rest of the region on that decision. That's probably the main risk that I would see at the moment. I think there's also been signals from government that they want these combined entities. They want the outcome they want to see is entities with multi-council combined entities. So, I think there's a risk that potentially some of these requirements that are being imposed on standalone, continue to kind of be imposed, and the incentives continue to be added to join these entities.
If I can follow on, I can hear that that's a risk to the entity and to the other councils. Am I right to say that you wouldn't see that there's a risk to Carterton Council by us delaying joining this entity?
Well, the risk to Carterton Council is the risks that have been talked about, through this conversation, the service delivery risk, the compliance risk, the financial risk, all of those sorts of things. There's also the possibility that, that we've set out principles and things for shareholder entry, and that would have to be considered at the time that Carterton chose to join on, and subject to those principles. So, it's hard to know. It's, depending on the point at which you might choose to enter, it's hard to know what the circumstances and things would be. But I think there are clear risks to standing alone, and I think the policy intent is clearly in the direction of regional multi-council organisations.
Yeah, I guess my question would be, Jeff, if you're a CE, you guys are CEs in the other entities, and Carterton's pulled out, and now you've readjusted all your budgets to cover transition costs and to go back and do the work again based on three councils, not four. You're incurring costs. How receptive are you going to be to me come alongside? By the way, I now want to jump in, and what likely requests would you have of me?
Yeah, quite a lot. I think to answer Grace's question clearly, the risk, Grace, would be that Carterton wouldn't have any say in whether or not we join. That decision would rest with the other three councils entirely. So we might want to join and they might say no. That's the risk.
I might say yes, but.
Would there be?
Yes, there may be terms.
Would there be a reputational risk as well?
I think we've got to remember around this table that this is for the benefit of we're talking about the benefit of our ratepayers and residents and so forth. What we do today has got we need to forget about the other three and the decisions they've made. But just on top of that question that was asked, I thought we were told slightly earlier on in the meeting that the water services entity without us would not be materially affected.
That's correct, but they would still have the power to say, we're fine on our own, Jack. We don't need you anymore. So the decision would be theirs, not ours. I think it's really
At a later date.
At a later date.
And my answer to the proposition that we got to think of our ratepayers is you're correct, both now and for the future, and the longer and wider peripheral possibilities that can manifest. And I don't think it'd be unrealistic for three CEs who have suddenly been slammed with a decision beyond their control to have to go away, revamp, rework, and produce a new model within the deadline to government, to be a little bit annoyed with Carterton coming back in later on and saying, we've had a rethink and we now want to join. And I think the CE, if you're a hard-nosed CE, you'd be looking to extract.
Can I think taking all of that, and it's all fair. I think if we were planning to join and delaying it, I think Carterton would miss out on a significant strategic opportunity. I think by joining late, you would join the party in whichever way it's set up. I think if you anticipate that you want to join, the best part will be, or the best time would be in the beginning, so that you can influence where a depot is put up, what type of software are we using, those kind of things, the transition arrangements of staff. I would, if you were to ask me whether to join now or in a year's time, I think my preference would be to be there from the start, so that you can choose your own draping.
Any other questions? Yes, sorry, guys. Yes, thank you. Thank you.
That's
No,
right.
no,
Just to follow on from Johannes's comment there, if we were to ask you to opt in for a year's time or now, your answer would be now. If we were to ask you, should we opt in or not, what would your answer be?
When we
We're here to make the decisions, not staff.
But we always take their advice, don't we?
No, we don't.
We don't.
We don't.
We take it on board. I'm interested.
The water storage project.
No, it's, yeah, I understand, Councillor Aileen, you're looking for that steer. That is appropriate for management to answer questions around the paper. Yeah, well, you know.
I don't see how it's inappropriate to ask the head of our infrastructure department what his preference would be for us going forward. This is a massive decision we're trying to make, and I would like to have full information from management.
But just supplementary to that, it's probably no different than the advice that we just received not 1 minute ago, saying that if we were going to join, we would join now and not in a year's time. It's no different. If we're in.
I think that's a practical consideration. Johannes raised, particularly around where we put the depot. But it's ours.
I think if we go back to the options that's been put in the report, and we consider the risks and the benefits of to our community with what's been presented, I would say we would stay with the recommendation that the outcome from consultation, that there are more benefits to Carterton in terms of resilience, in terms of expertise, by joining a water service delivery, the water service entity.
So since we've opened that door, Catherine, you are the person who has worked with all the CEs. You have seen the detail in and out. You've heard the debate. Some CEs have been forced into the fire to go and push forward propositions from this council table that have not met necessarily favourably, and you have sat in the middle of that.
I just make a point though. Her role moving forward is to lead the transition into this organisation. So I would say she's conflicted as much as you're saying anybody else is.
Whether it's transition with 2, 3 or 4, doesn't matter.
You've said clearly though that it's going to be a lot harder for them if we pull ourselves out.
No, it'll cause pain. That's all. I'm not saying it's going to be a lot harder.
I'm just making it clear that I don't think she is completely impartial in this decision either.
Well, that's notable. We got the opinion of Johannes, but we're not from Catherine. And you heard Johannes's opinion. So
Just for anyone that's watching and listening in, and this is a conversation that we have been having for 4 years, and particularly in relation to Y+T, specifically in the last 6 months. On the 9th of July, we had an extraordinary meeting. And if we have a look at our minutes from the 13th, our agenda on the 13th of August, it actually says our minutes. And I'd just like for our ratepayers, of whom 70% actually endorsed us joining the model, the water service entity Y+T. One of the motions was that endorses Carterton District Council participating in a joint Wairarapa Tararua water service council controlled organisation, it's a bit of a mouthful, was moved by our Deputy Mayor and seconded by Councillor Della. Councillor Gallen abstained. Everybody else voted in favour for endorsing us joining. It notes that the terms that had been negotiated and reaffirms no organisation has appointment rights to the WSE board. That was unanimous. Unanimous also was approving unbudgeted expenditure of up to 1.25 million as Carterton's quarter share of transition and establishment costs, as I said, unanimous. And it was also noted unanimously that the unbudgeted expenditure is going to be capitalised, so it's funded from borrowing, which will be transferred to the entity. So in answer to your question, it will be moved forward.
Just to add to that, that's been subtly left off, was the last recommendation.
I hadn't actually finished reading them all out. So if you'd let me finish, that would be great. It was, again, unanimously delegating authority to our chief executive to sign relevant documents to establish this new entity, etc. And then an additional motion was put forward, which was to instruct the chief executive, a motion that was lost, it wasn't an additional, was instructing the chief executive officer to cease development of a standalone water service delivery plan. Deputy Mayor moved it, Councillor Dalla seconded it, and it was myself and Councillor Dalla and Deputy Mayor in favour, and against was Councillor Aileen, Councillor Newman, Councillor Lawrence and Councillor Gallen. So I would just like that out in public record that the Plan B was continued because that motion was lost. So I just wanted people to know that.
That's right.
Okay.
And we're here to make a decision today.
Are there any other questions at all? You find it? Councillor Dalla,
I've
yes.
just got some closing comments at some stage if I can reserve. Some comments.
Yes. Feel free, yes.
So we
Sorry for me. Sorry.
No.
From yourself.
Yeah, no, I want to reserve my right to say some closing comments when we
Move
get,
to the recommendations.
before we go to the recommendations.
Okay. Yeah. That's right.
No, just say one thing in terms of what Councillor Cherry Campbell just said about the proceeding with Plan B, if you like. The reason that I voted against the motion to not carry that forward was purely so that we were in a position to kind of move around a little bit if the other three councils changed the nature of the paper that was in front of us. And that's where I asked the question right at the beginning as to whether any of those changes had taken place. And no, so what we're looking at now is exactly what we were looking at on 7th of July.
Understand. Yeah.
With certainty that the other three councils have adopted it.
Without amendments.
Without. Okay. Are we now? If I feel they're in a position, they've made their own decisions. All right. So we move then to the recommendation. Sorry. Oh, sorry.
Are we having discussion?
Oh, yes. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
We've been actually having discussion. Okay, I thought it was a free flowing question answer discussion, but if you wish to have more discussion, yes, absolutely.
Well, it's covered in comments, His Worship, for a decision that's of this importance. I'm happy to lead away. I thought you wanted to, Brian, but that's
That's what I was waiting for, and I thought, well, yeah, let's go. All right, moving right along. Yeah,
Look,
wrap up comments.
I think we've had it put in front of us enough times that how important this decision is on behalf of our ratepayers. The fact that any of us around this table can change our minds on our last decision is up to us. And nothing anyone else says should impact that, no matter what decision you made in the last meeting. So just remember that for how you want to vote today. Right, ring fencing and debt and pricing for the first 9 years within the new Y+T entity. And the price difference between Y+T and CDC standalone in-house model is negligible for the first 9 years. I really question why we would want to join in that respect to start with. Legal advice from Ben Gully that we've only just received in the last few days has stated that over time, beyond the 10-year point, in extrapolating extrapolating the WSDP model, the joint CCO would be expected to have a lower cost per connection than the internal CDC standalone structure. So even advice from legally does not say that we're going to have a lower cost per connection by joining this particular entity. I struggle with some of the rhetoric around allowing for increased growth, when I believe we already are allowing for increased growth in our network. For right out to 2053, we have capacity or our consent. I think we can go a lot further than that for the capacity of our water reservoirs, wastewater reservoirs and so forth, and the upgrades we're going to be doing with our headworks. So I struggle with some of that. Staying in-house will reduce the stranded overheads. I look at our strategic position in Carterton right now, and I believe it's the strongest it's ever been. We have an incredible Three Waters team, and no matter the rhetoric around the new water services entity possibly stealing our staff, that's only conjecture, and our waters team may be very happy to stay working within our waters team. Our Three Waters infrastructure is in a very good state, and once the wastewater headworks project is completed, we will have an extremely resilient system. We can also find comfort in our council's level of spend on Three Waters infrastructure, which we've been told through a submission is 28 cents per dollar of rates revenue, which is exceptional. So we are doing what we should be doing. We are informed Carden may be able to move forward in a debt-free position if we choose to join the water services entity. I struggle. Why would we want to relinquish strategic control and ownership of Matarawa Farm when it could be used to create new revenue streams for our district? I see that our ratepayers have suffered under high rates for many years, and we battled to renew our assets and build resilience for growth. There's no negligible differences in pricing, as we've seen in the first 9 years, whether we remain in-house or join the entity. We have possibilities and opportunities to create new revenue streams, even within that 9 years, to help offset rates increases and potentially move us towards being cost neutral, which means that any additional expenses incurred by council are offset by corresponding savings or revenue generation. So just to name a few of these, we look at Wainara Industrial Estate. It's been included in the Wellington region's future growth strategy for a reason. Our council chose to add water resilience to that estate with endless possibilities, from building a new water storage reservoir, utilising the water races, and creating economic growth for our farmers and so forth out in the eastern Taranaki. We have a farm at Matarawa, which is adjacent to our wastewater reservoirs and refuse station. It's so strategic. We have a feasibility study underway into the use of our sludge removed for our wastewater treatment ponds. That's going to be looked at turning into compost, and if the trial's successful, we could have massive opportunities for our district for creating revenue for council by taking all our region's sludge and turning it into compost. The same can be said for opportunities for generating new revenue within the waste management space. And one of those options that I have been personally looking at is around gypsum from waste plasterboard and selling the gypsum back to Winstones or back to farmers. So what I'm talking about here is we are in such a strategic position in council where we have opportunities in front of us which could come to fruition in the next 9 years, I do not see the benefit in joining the water services entity right now because of this, when we could be a cost neutral council. Cheers.
Councillor Newman.
What I'm finding really tricky about this decision is how much of it's just crystal ball gazing, both ways. We could win, we could lose with whatever option we choose. So that makes the decision a really, really tricky one, because you've got to cross your fingers and hope for the best either way. But what we do know for sure is that we've got a strong waters team here. We've been working on our infrastructure, and we've got the ability to meet the projected needs within our 175% council cap. Like was said earlier, we're elected to represent Carterton ratepayers, and I think it's really important that they are the ones we're really thinking about this decision, not South Wairarapa or Tararua. We need to remember that it's our residents who've paid the price for ensuring that our water infrastructure is how it is, that it's fit for purpose and that it's future-proof. And I think we've done the hard yards in that. I don't disagree that the way forward for councils isn't working together, but I don't think this is the next right step for Carterton right now. There's so many unknowns, and financially for our water customers, it's a line fall as to which one's cheaper. When we look at all the information provided, Carterton's no better or worse with status quo over the next 5 or even 10 years. We have an option to wait and see how it plays out, see what other curveballs are thrown, and watch the water settle, and then we could make a fully informed decision with the Carterton ratepayers being the main ones we're thinking about.
Thank you, Councillor Newman. Any other closing comments from Councillor Gowan?
Yeah, the Carterton ratepayers, if I'm not wrong, have paid, like $50 million towards our water assets over the last 10 years or something. We've just got to hand that over. These are why we've had highest rates in the country, because we're trying to future-proof ourselves. That's why the rate's been so high. Daleton, Matarata Farm, all those things we've had to purchase to future-proof ourselves. Other people have not had that foresight to invest in the future, but we're all going in the same melting pot now, because we've been hard done by. Bigger is not always better. We've got a pretty good in-house controllable model. It's pretty tight-knit team, and we can turn pretty quick, whereas big models, once you get going, a bit of a juggernaut, you just can't turn it down. I'm afraid I've always had reservations about Three Waters, local water done well. I've never had taken the ground that, yeah, good idea. It's always been a contentious. Feels like there's something coming up behind me. So I've never been ready to join a big entity right from day one. Our ratepayers have given us the opportunity, they're entrusting us to make the best decision. It could be in 5 years' time they'll hate the shit out of us.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Lawrence.
I think the people who've spoken are quite right. Our concern is for the Carterton ratepayers, but we have to take a long-term view. This is probably the biggest decision that has confronted local government in Wairarapa probably ever. And I think in terms of pure cost to ratepayers, on the numbers that have been presented, there is no margin. There's no real difference in cost in being part of the large entity or not being part of it. And it's been difficult to present this in terms of numbers, but my feeling is, and we're looking at hard numbers, but they're all based on wild guesses, really. My feeling is that there will be economies that come from the larger entity, that there will be financial advantages to Carterton. I also think that there will be significant advantages to Wairarapa in not just in combining the water services, assets and delivery, but also in the overall governance, management and growth of Wairarapa. And that certainly benefits Carterton. I'm in favour of anything that limits the vulcanisation of the place. It amazes me how wide those two rivers are. I've pulled the numbers out of the 4 different plans just to compare with where we stand, how we look. And even among 4 small councils, we're tiny. I just can't. I just don't believe that continuing on our own with water services or anything else really is a good long-term call for us.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Is there any Councillor Aileen or any closing comments from anyone?
Yep. When I think back to this whole journey of local water, 3 waters, the Labour government's initial proposal, which I think initially was actually a National Party Nick Smith idea, to create a better way of doing water across the country. The initial concept was that you would have these super entities and that would create this benefit of the scalability and the economies of scale, like Councillor Lawrence just mentioned. I remember under the Labour government's policy, initially it was going to be these 4 superstructures and that would have the benefit. Then that was unpopular, so they whittled it down to that 10 model. And they admitted at the time the benefit that councils would see in that model was significantly less because the scalability wasn't there. We're now looking at a model with our 4 tiny little councils, and I struggle to see how there is really any benefit in that model. I think we've whittled down this initial big concept to something smaller and maybe more palatable. And maybe there's less risk, but it does seem like there's less benefit as well. And I think echoing the comments of some of the councillors have made, we are elected to make decisions for our ratepayers. That is our only mandate. We don't have the right to make decisions for what's best for our neighbouring councils. We only have the right to do what's best for our Carterton residents. And I agree, it is not just today, it is into the future. And as a councillor who's 30 years old, I really care about the future of Carterton and our ratepayers going forward. So I'm not doing this for short-sighted reasons. I can see the benefits in a harmonisation of our neighbouring councils, but this solution doesn't seem to be a solution to me. And I've mentioned it several times over the last few months. It feels like putting the cart before the horse. Our governance tables are not aligned on so many things. I mean, look at the fact that we had to hold these meetings on the same day because we really wanted to be sure that our neighbours would do the same thing we did. There isn't a level of trust or relationship yet to make these big decisions. I think if our governance level connected, we were all one council, this is an obvious solution. We are not one council. We don't represent the Wairarapa. We only represent Carterton. And that's the basis I think we should be making this decision from. Thanks.
Granny.
We're going around the view.
Yes, well, it's any order. There's no particular order.
Yeah, I'm agree that we are here to make decisions on behalf of our ratepayers. We went out to consultation and 70.3% of our ratepayers who submitted were for our preferred option, which is the Wairarapa plus Tararua model. I agree with Councillor Newman that it's very difficult with crystal ball gazing and not knowing numbers. Unfortunately, in a lot of businesses and when there are mergers and things taking place, that is often the case. I also agree with Councillor Aileen that it would be great that it's kind of cart before the horse a little bit. But unfortunately, that's what we are being presented with. I feel that Carterton going alone does not actually send out a very good signal to our neighbours about future mergers, amalgamations, unitary authorities, whatever it may be, of bringing our region together. And I also think that we have meetings, we make decisions. I'm a little bit worried for the future if elected members make a decision at one meeting and then change their mind at the next meeting, not just for our ratepayers and for certainty of moving forward, but also certainty for our management being given instruction to work one way and then have that rescinded. I think this is an ideal opportunity for us to join with our neighbours. As has been mentioned, the price differential for the next 9 years or so is negligible either way. But I think long term, the benefits definitely outweigh even crystal ball gazing, being a tiny little island of, what are we, a 13% shareholder out of the 4 councils, stuck on our own. So that's all I have to say.
Pascal.
Thank you. So I'd just like to start off that and I apologise for repeating a lot of the stuff that's already been said, but I've got some notes here, so I'm going to say. And this decision that we're making today for our ratepayers is intergenerational, and it is for the long term. It's not just, we're not just talking about up to 9 or 10 or 12 years. We're talking 30, 40, 50 years plus. So it's one thing that is important to me, that we're making a big decision for our generation and 2 or 3 generations after us. The consultation that we did way back earlier this year, 70%, as has already been said, of people that replied to that have said they want the Y+T model. And that was with the information that was received at that time. So, and that was their preferred option. All the questions that we have been asking for the last, 4 years, have been answered, and the best information that is available at the time. The information has been a moving feast, I admit that, but all the officers, when they have given us the information, it is the best information that was available to anybody at that time. I'm a little bit disappointed that this modelling that we're doing is only indicative for a short period of time. We're talking 9, 10, 12 years at max, and these decisions that we're making or are being asked to make today are for a lot longer period than that. So just bear that in mind. I'm also aware that DIA have told us that our water services delivery plan does tick all the boxes and is sustainable. That is the combined entity one. The standalone plan, as been said today, also ticks the boxes at present, but will limit our borrowing, finance and resilience options in the future. And that has also been spelled out to us. And that's another really important part. I think the whole difficulty around this decision that we're making today is the uncertainty of the unknown. And there's a lot of, as has already been said, a lot of crystal ball gazing to go on. But in saying that, I think we have made some really brave decisions in the past over water resilience. And I think this is another time where we've got to be brave and stick our necks out a bit. And that's why I will be voting in favour of this Y+T model. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe.
Okay. Yeah, well, 10,000 people. I guess that, you're making a decision today, but also not just for the 10,000 people, as Councillor Ayling mentioned, and it's been mentioned before. This is an intergenerational decision, and around what's best for Carterton, definitely, but not just the Carterton of today. The decision that you make, whichever way that you go, is going to have no doubt going to have a ripple effect for our communities for years to come. And I guess it's up to everybody to have a think about what is the best thing for Carterton, not today, but moving forward into the future. I do take on the point that, you know, the goal should love Carterton to move to essentially be a rate-free space. And if, you know, the loss of, I just want to reassure the councillors that the loss of if it was the loss of Matarawa, and there's 50 hectares across the road that's been waiting specifically, purposely for Carterton District Council, which I'm more than happy to. There's a reason why I've been holding it. It's for this council, for our community. Now, if there's a loss, well, there's an opportunity here. So just want to reassure you, Deputy Mayor, and all of the councillors that if Matarau Farm was to, and the debt go to this entity, there is an option to continue to move it down to that path. So that we can create a better Carterton, not for today, but for our kids and our grandkids. I think whichever way you decide, and whatever the final decision, the first three people that you meet and you talk to out in the community are going to not like you anyway. That's the reality. Yeah, I mean, and
That's why they get the big
part of being an elected member. You always need to.
I'm
You've got to
blaming
make the
Jeff,
unpopular
in your hand.
decisions. All I would say is that, one, the aspirations of the council are safe, whichever way it goes, and second, that if everybody, when you do make your decision, not based on the ratepayers of today, but the best interests of Carterton long term.
Sure, thank you. Well, in conclusion, I don't really want to get into a closing summary that regurgitates comments that have all been made, and I'm loath to do my point by point rebuttal or reinforcement of comments and views. But there are some things that hang in my head because they've always hung there, and I will take on board Councillor Lawrence's comment that this is probably the biggest decision to have ever faced elected members and local government that I can recall. Even 1989, elected members didn't have a choice. It just happened. It was legislated. And 800 councils were shrunk down to 60 odd plus regional councils. And we still wonder why regional councils exist to this very day. I guess I've always been very, very clear, and I have no reason to change my view, that whilst I'm a proud Carterton son, my parents were living in Brooklyn Road when I was born, and I'm proud to have come home to Carterton. And of all the 70 houses we looked at throughout the whole of the wider upper, Chris and I chose to come to Carterton for a whole bunch of reasons, which have nothing to do with rates and had nothing to do with economic viability. It had everything to do with the character and the nature of this place and the people in it. And I do take on board the comments of councillors, because I respect you for that your focus is, what's best for Carterton. I guess we will always have a view that may differ as to, as Councillor Dale is saying, whether what's best for Carterton for 9 years, for 15 years, for 30 years, for 40 years, for 50 years. And I will come back to Councillor Aileen's comments that, you're quite right. This whole piece of legislation, this whole proposition put up by central government was something I never supported right from the get-go. It was Nick Smith's idea, picked up by Nanaia Mahuta, ram forward and then campaigned against, and we get another political model, which is out here, which is very similar, but with no money. And the reason for it all comes back down to that infrastructure deficit, national infrastructure deficit, which was 800?
180 million. Billion. 180
billion dollars of infrastructure deficit, which no government, not Labor-led, national-led, anybody-led, could ignore. And the one crucial area that seemed to leap out, highlighted by the Havelock North incident, was water. And they chose to look at not just fresh water, potable water, but wastewater. And we've decided to put in stormwater as well because it's logical. We understand that. We collectively made that decision. There are many reasons against that. But the legislation has progressed and we find ourselves in this situation. But I guess you can't ignore the fact that when politicians, we are all politicians. Now, we may be retailers first or water engineers first or, electrical engineers first, but we are politicians. That's what we chose to do. And we're charged with some responsibilities. And you can't ignore that infrastructure deficit, which is largely being accumulated, don't look too far north or south, by politicians who weren't able within themselves to do what they had to do. And don't believe that the decision by Carterton District Council back in 2011, 2012 to go and buy the Dalefield Farm was not without challenge. Don't believe that the irrigation project was not without challenge, and don't believe, and the debacle, and therein is a message as well. The trials and tribulations of our wastewater pond project is a direct example, in my humble view, of what can go wrong when you don't have good management staff. The clock tower could be another one. The Sergeant's Motors debacle could be another one, and we could go on and list them. Carterton has not been pure and pristine. Carterton has failed. It's failed in management, and it's failed in councillors' obligations to scrutinise and hold management to account, and projects got out of control and we lost money, ratepayers' money. Then we had the audacity to put up their rates and say, well, it's just these things happen. As one councillor at the time said to me, projects always run over. No, they don't. No, they don't. And you've seen the evidence of that in the last 2.5, 3 years. That is a failure of governance to do the job. And there's no indication going forward, and Councillor Newman, you're quite right. We can crystal ball, and it's both ways. But one thing you can be certain of is that if people start offering big money to highly competent staff, they've got families to feed in tight economic times, and you cannot criticise them for taking that job because it pays 50 grand more. And yeah, we're fine today. We're fine today. But we have seen how the labour workforce market is moving, and we're struggling with that both in the workforce leadership group of the Wairarapa Economic Development Strategy and within Mayor's Task Force for Jobs. People are moving to Australia to get jobs. And I do worry, and that's why I've been pushing the view that we should put HR in as a risk assessment, is that people get burnt out. And when you start loading more reviews, more consultation onto people, there's only so much they're prepared to take. So I'm trying to look at the bigger picture. And I do take on board, because I've been a very strong messenger of the points that the Deputy Mayor's raised, generating revenue streams. We can look towards New Plymouth, we can look towards Tauranga and Auckland, and see what generating revenue streams can do for a council, for a district. But are they rate free? Is New Plymouth rate free?
No.
Is Tauranga rate free?
No.
What's their revenue stream for external earnings?
New Plymouth is about 100 million.
So New Plymouth generates 100 million and still they're not rate free.
Rates at 200 and total revenue is 200 million.
Yeah. So, and Tauranga, I think we're up in probably bigger, the same territory, but I believe that, the Deputy Mayor's quite right. There's opportunities for Carterton to do a whole bunch of things, and imagine what it could do if it was debt-free and still own the water treatment, water processing plant, still own the water storage, still own the sludge, still own the nursery, and work in partnership with iwi, and I'll get to that. I don't see any of those things as being lost. I think the bigger picture, if I'm to stick to my views around what is better for Carterton in the wider upper context, it's the wider upper. It's the wider upper to me. And Carterton's interest, both economically and in terms of its social well-being, will be generated by a refinement and a rationalisation across the whole of the wider upper. And this is but one step in that direction. Whether I liked it or not at the outset, too late. It's here. Do I have an option, given the timeline, as to whether there's clarity, are we going to be an in-house standalone, out-house standalone? No, I have no clarity over that, and I don't actually have numbers around. But I do really get excited by the thought of a council being debt-free. And I do get excited about the thought that it could still generate revenue and still own assets. And the question of being part of the bigger entity, well, many of us didn't think Auckland would ever work. Many of us now didn't think that water care services up in Auckland would work. The water care is not Wellington Water. And there's a reason for that. It's about professional boards and politicians not being involved in making decisions about how the money is spent and when and where on infrastructure. That's the greatest strength I see in an independent board. And I see economy of scale. I agree with Councillor Lawrence. Economy of scale has given us that opportunity. And I'm not a big buyer into modelling. I'm not. Other than me on a catwalk, it would look disgusting. But modelling is not my flavour of the month, because 9 times out of 10, they're wrong. Okay? They're wrong. So that's where I stand on the matter. And I do feel that that's where I'll let it rest. So we move then. And I thank you all for your contribution. And can I just say this? I love you guys.
Oh.
I love the way you've got your own independent views, strength and character. And it doesn't matter that I may be able to drink beer with you and have an argument with you at this table, have a debate with you at this table. The way in which you conduct yourself here is an example. And I'm proud to be, for the next month or so, I've been proud to be your mayor over the last 3 years. And I'm proud of the way you conduct yourself. And I'm proud of the way you put your arguments and put your debates. And should you all be returned to the table, I know that I'll continue to be proud of the way you do things. And to my whanaunga and kakura whitia, thank you for coming, Joel. We're not done quite yet, but I know what iwi's views are. It's very clear. And my views reflect that as well, because they are also my people. Kia ora, thank you for allowing me to speak. So, the recommendation, and we'll take them piece initially the first two independently. First, I'd have someone move that we receive the report. Councillor Kira Campbell, seconded by Councillor Della. All in favour? Against? Abstentions? Motion is carried. Second resolution recommendation. Council approves the attached water services delivery plan for the Carterton District Council as part of the wider Upper Tararua Water Services Organisation for submission to the Department of Internal Affairs. I will move that. I'm looking for a seconder. Councillor Lawrence. All in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Abstentions? Well, there are no abstentions. So we have 4 for and 4 against. The casting vote comes to me. Well, you put me on a spot, and on this instance, I am going to reflect on 2 things. One, this council decided to support the model. 2, this is bigger than just me. This is bigger than Carterton. My casting vote is in favour of the motion. The motion is carried. The next recommendations, C, D, E, and F, I take it that you've all read them and you're comfortable with those. And if you would, the last set of recommendations submitted on paper.
You should take G separately.
I'll take G separately because you may want to adjust things in there. I've got mine upside, yeah. Thank you, David. C, D, E, and F. Someone to move, Councillor Campbell. Someone to second. Councillor Lawrence, all in favour? Against? And the casting vote is in favour. Motion is carried. G. Take it as read. Let's start from the top. The resolution notes consideration has been given to whether further consultation on the local water done well was required, and it was determined that it was not for a number of reasons, including one, consultation was about the future service delivery model for waters, not the price of water services. I'm just going to check, are we comfortable with those being in? Is there, let me just do it the other way.
You may not need them all.
The final forecasts were prepared. Jeff, give some, SD, I haven't read them all. Final forecasts.
You may not need them all.
Financial forecast.
The final three, council, are the ones that are requirements under the Local Government Act for you to consider. So the final three are, the first one and perhaps the final three are the most important. That you know and understand the views and preferences of those who may be affected or have an interest in this decision.
It should be considered.
Yes, correct.
Council has considered. So those are the three that have to stay in?
Yes, I prefer, that would be my recommendation.
4, 5, 6.
1, 4, 5 and 6 would be my recommendation, with the note that 4 should be council has considered.
Council has considered the views, changing to considered. So we don't need 2 and 3?
Yes.
And I won't put them. Catherine? No. What do you?
Councillor Aileen does not have recommendations. I will email them to her.
Right. Then I shall pause to give Councillor Aileen an opportunity to read them, because I don't wish to ask her to vote on something she hasn't read.
Unless you wish to read them out.
Well, we can. Okay, so then notes consideration has been given to whether further consultation on the local water done well was required, and it was determined that it was not for a number of reasons, including bullet point 1, consultation was about the future service delivery model for waters, not the price of water services. That's the first. This is from the Bell Gully advice, right? And then 4, which will become 2. Council has considered the views and preferences of persons likely to be affected by or to have an interest in the delivery of water services. 3 would be council knows the views and preferences of persons likely to be affected by, to have an interest in the future delivery of water services, which we do. And 4 would be council is aware of the nature and significance of this decision, including its likely impact from the perspective of the persons who will or may be affected by or have an interest in the decision. Clear? So noting that the other resolutions have passed, it gives you the opportunity to think if you still support those or not. I will put that recommendation G. Would someone like to move, please? Well, I'll move it. Someone to second? Councillor Dalla? All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Abstentions? The motion is carried. Closing, right?
Thank you, Worship. I think everything that needs to be said has been said.
Yeah. Thank you. And Catherine, look, can I thank you for being available? I think your assistance was valuable and necessary, and thank you for making your time. I know you've been pressed with different council meetings all day, so thank you for making time for us. To the staff and
trouble.
management, thank you for the work you've done. Thank you for considerations to the team. I know that was tough. Can I just say, and I have to as a point of order, it's all decisions passed by council become the decisions of council, and we are all bound by collective responsibility. So now the task is to make it work, and that is our job. That's how democracy works. Thank you.
Can I-
Yes. Yep.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
I would just ask the chair to reflect on the fact that he has spoken many times from the chair about the fact he would never use a casting vote. And you mentioned the fact that this is the most significant decision that local government have ever had to make. And you chose that moment to use your casting vote on something that is extremely significant. And you have spoken very loudly against the former mayor using his casting vote for something of much lesser significance.
Yeah.
I think there are a few of us around the table who are shocked by this decision.
Yeah. And I understand that. And I do cast back to the point that the decision to proceed with YT was made by the whole council. And this is consistent with that view. And yes, I am one. And it is a challenge for me. But this is a significant matter that I firmly believe is in the best interests of Carterton. I know I won't be popular in some parts of the world. But, I'm used to, I know it's hard.
Person doesn't like you.
It's hard. I apologise if it's caused distress, and it is a hard call for me too. But I truly believe that this is the right thing to do. I will add, one of the reasons I got very upset with the last mayor who used his casting vote was because he was conflicted. He was the chairman of the committee who stood to gain by that vote. That infuriated me. But that's another point, another story, isn't it? So I apologise if I caused you some disappointment, but I am looking at the big picture, as has been said, 35, 50 years down the line.
This wish.
Yeah. So
You don't mind if I intervene? You don't have to apologise. That's your decision as chair.
Yeah.
So we accept that decision.
I appreciate that. Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Steve, because I was about to say the same thing. Yeah.
So look, thank you very much, and please carry on doing what you guys do. I do stand by what I said. I think you're awesome. Karakia whakanutanga. Thank you very much.